everyone. I'm Lori Cutts, and I manage agency partnerships here at Everflow. I want to thank you for joining our fireside chat, Influencers, the new affiliate. And I'd also like to welcome and introduce you to Tammy Neely, our guest today from Find Your Influence. Tammy started out in PR and is now the SVP of Communications at Find Your Influence, which is a platform that allows brands to identify influencers, launch campaigns, and track results. Today, Tammy and I are going to explore why it can be difficult for brands to connect with influencers and integrate them into their affiliate strategy. And we'll also share some tactics for integrating influencers into your affiliate programs. So before we get started, I just wanted to mention that everyone who registered for the fireside chat is eligible for 10% off your first managed campaign at Find Your Influence. And if you're interested, you can reach out to Tammy. Her email is tammy@findyourinfluence.com. And we'll also be sharing the recording on our website, on our social channels, and via email. And if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A tab anytime throughout the fireside chat, and we'll plan to answer the questions at the end of our session. So I'm excited to kick off our discussion today. I thought it would be helpful to have Tammy quickly introduce yourself and tell a little bit about what Find Your Influence does, share how you got your start in the industry and what led you to join Find Your Influence, and then just talk a little bit about what you're most focused on right now.
Yeah, well, thank you to start. Thank you, Lori, for having me today. I'm really excited to have this chat with you. I have been working with Find Your Influence for 5 years. I began my career working in professional sports, then I worked in identity theft protection, and I worked in education technology. All of those roles were in PR and communications roles. And as the traditional public relations has evolved, right? It's not as much pitching reporters anymore and reaching out for news coverage as it is engaging with social media influencers and looking to get coverage, if you will, of your product or brand through this new medium and with these new influencers. So I've been doing that for 5 years, and it's so exciting to be I don't want to say at the forefront of it because I've only been with Find Your Influence for 5 years, but this month our company celebrates our 10-year anniversary. So dating back to July 2013, the company launched as the industry's first all-in-one influencer marketing solution. And what that means is we have a community of influencers that have opted in to be discovered by brands. And then we have brands that come in and say, I'm looking for influencers in the beauty space, in the travel space, in financial services, in technology, whatever it is. And our platform allows these brands and influencers to work together and create content that not only performs, but exceeds campaign goals. So it's really exciting to be part of. I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions there, Lori.
I just, well, the one additional one was, what are you most focused on right now?
So right now, a lot of my focus is on just the conversation that we're having today is on education. So how can we bring all stakeholders in the industry together, be it platforms like Everflow, platforms like Meta, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, platforms like Find Your Influence, as well as the influencers themselves. Maybe they have talent managers, brands directly, marketing agencies, PR agencies. If we're all operating in silos, the industry isn't working holistically together. So my focus now is on creating educational programming where we can have everybody in the industry at the table to be part of the conversation to move the entire industry forward.
Yeah, it seems like, influencers are a really hot topic right now, and it's really interesting to hear about your evolution sort of from PR into the influencer space, and, how they're kind of converging with both, PR, social, and influencer. So I'm really excited to kick off our discussion today. I thought it would be helpful to start with a question that is top of mind for a lot of brands and advertisers. So a lot of brands, want to know what it takes to get started with influencer marketing. What are some of the things that they should be thinking about, and what types of things like budgets are required?
Okay. So for a brand to say, I want to get started in influencer marketing, let's not do it just because it's the cool thing and everyone else is doing it. Let's have a plan first. Understand how can influencer marketing support your overall marketing goals. So instead of being like, oh, we have extra money, let's throw it at influencer marketing and see if it works. I'm telling you right now, if it doesn't support your overall strategy, you're going to look back and be like, did that really perform? What is it doing for us? So understand how influencer marketing can support your overall strategy. And then even more, what can an influencer strategy do for you that your current marketing strategy can't? Or what can it do to amplify your current strategy? We look at this holistically and say, what is your plan? What are you trying to achieve? And then start small. You don't have to say, oh, I need $100,000, $200,000 budget to get started. Absolutely not. Start small and test. You want to test, see what works, what doesn't work, what influencers work, what platforms work, what messages work, what audiences work, all of that. But if you start small, you can test and refine again, and continue to repeat until you get the larger results that you're looking for. As for budget, full transparency, you can start without paying influencers. Some brands can say, okay, we're going to go through maybe an exchange program where we're going to provide you product in exchange for content that you create. Now, know when you do that, you don't really have control over the content they create because you're not paying them. You haven't negotiated a rate with them. So you can do that, and you can test that to see maybe what influencers do perform. But I think you can get started on an influencer budget, at maybe a $10,000 entry point. And that's definitely not going to get you working with, YouTubers who have millions and millions of followers. That's going to get you working with maybe someone on Instagram who has 25 to 30,000 followers. I'm not saying that's one creator. You can work with a series of creators for that amount. And then I would also encourage you to not only look at the content that's performing. Maybe you have influencer A, B, C, and D, and influencer C's content is really outperforming influencer A. Take some of your, don't spend all your budget contracting influencers. Save some of your budget and take the content that influencer C has created and put some paid media behind that. Amplify that through the platform, whether that's on TikTok through Spark ads, or you're whitelisting it, or putting paid media behind it on Instagram or Facebook. Now you can reach an even larger audience beyond who the influencers' followers are, and you can really see performance and growth that way as well.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it sounds like a lot of brands have the opportunity to get involved with influencer marketing, especially if they can share a free product or do sort of a hybrid of payment and product.
Yeah.
So as brands look at influencer marketing, what are some strategies for finding influencers that are fit for their brand?
Well, it would be silly of me not at this point to not talk about Find Your Influence and the fact that we help brands connect with influencers to execute their campaigns. There are a lot of platforms out there that do a lot of different things. We are confident that we are the most robust solution that exists today. But there certainly is a price point for that to use Find Your Influence. But as you mentioned at the top of the hour, email me and you can get 10% off your first managed services campaign. If you're not engaging a Find Your Influence, if you're saying, hey, let's test this out ourselves and see what we're capable of doing, to find influencers, I would encourage you to start using hashtags. What are the hashtags that are about your brand? So maybe your brand is a water bottle that fits in the cup holder in your car. Well, what hashtags might people be using about your water bottle? Maybe it's your brand name. So hashtag brand, hashtag water on the go, or whatever it might be. Start searching for hashtags to see who's organically already talking about your brand, and then start tracking them. Have they talked about you one time? Do they talk about you regularly? Is your water bottle in a lot of their images, maybe when they're working out or they're at the beach or they're on the go? It is a lot of work. It's a big lift to start going out and finding those influencers on your own. It is possible to do. When you have a third party like Find Your Influence, our system is built to go find those for you auto-magically, if you will. But I would recommend, if you're going about it on your own, to begin searching for hashtags. Maybe who's already organically tagging your brand when they're posting about your content. Look for those individuals and then dive in and find out, who do we think their audience is? Do we feel that they're brand safe? Meaning maybe they're not posting about politics or alcohol or, whatever it might be a red flag for your brand, really dive in that way and examine those type of influencers.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of different strategies you can use to engage with influencers. What would you say are some of the best practices for partnering with influencers? And are there any tips that you would recommend for reaching them or communicating with them?
So I would recommend communicate early and often. So once you know, like, okay, we have budget, we have our campaign brief, begin reaching out to these influencers. And when I say communicate early and often, repeat that. Repeat that often communication until the campaign is complete. And so, okay, you find these influencers and you want to reach out to them. A first step might be to DM them and be like, "Hi, Lori, I love all of your content about our water bottle that we see you using in so much content. We'd love to talk to you about a campaign, about working with us on creating content. What's a good email for us to communicate with?" You want to take that initial conversation from a DM to an inbox, to an email. And I say that because we don't see what's happening in the influencers' DMs, but they're regularly getting questions in there. And to go back and be like, where was that message from? What was her name? Was her name Lori? Like going back there, now you've created an obstacle. So by asking for an email address or saying, hey, here's my email, please email me if you're interested. I'd love to have this conversation, or here's a phone number for me. But take that conversation away from the DMs so that you can easily have that communication and the influencer doesn't get lost searching for that thread to talk to you about. And when you reach out, personalize that communication. So it's not saying, hi, Lori, I'd love to work with you on this campaign. Please email me. No, personalize the outreach. Hey, Lori, I've seen that in your last vacation, you had your water bottle in 80% of your shots. It looks so great. And we loved how you talk about the sustainability of this. It was really impressive when you did this. Now you have the influencer's attention. It's not like, hey, we have budget. Do you want to work with us? Now it's personalized. You've invested in me. You've looked at my content and you've told me what you liked and how you see us working together. So everybody likes that personalization, right? You're like, oh, wow, that you've seen me. Like I feel seen, instead of, we see you have our water bottle. Would you like to work together? No, like personalize it. Tell them why. Tell them how you think it would be beneficial for them, and also how you think it could benefit your brand. And as we're talking affiliate here, you can have that conversation of, we have a rate in mind, but we'd also like to offer you an affiliate partnership. So, there's an additional incentive for you when your followers engage and purchase these products. So I think that communication, it might seem like a lot, but it gets their attention, and it will get them to engage with you with that personalization. Try to take it out of DMs and continue that communication ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like personalization is really the way to go with these influencers, and having sort of a compelling proposition for them. Would you say that a lot of brands have like an ongoing relationship with these influencers?
It really depends. I feel it's strongest when a brand does and like have an ongoing relationship. Now, that's not to say when you get started that if you work with influencer A, that she's going to perform and that you want to have an ongoing relationship with her. In the beginning, you are going to be testing, right? So you see, wow, influencer A is really not performing, but influencer C, she's blowing it out of the water. Let's continue to build momentum behind her. So maybe it's, we've launched our product and now we have a different color of our product, or now a different function of our product. Now you're going back to influencer C, who has, she's already established her experience with the product. So like your marketing funnel, right? You begun with awareness, and now influencer C is talking about, a new color, a new way, a new thing that it can do. Now you're moving the audience through the marketing funnel with those multiple touch points. So I think it is beneficial that during your test, you find out who's performing well, and then you find ways to re-engage them with other product messaging as you move through your overall marketing strategy as well.
That makes a lot of sense. So shifting gears here a little bit, I know we've seen, that companies are shifting some of their influencer marketing from, which kind of started out in brand awareness and in the social teams, to performance marketing, and just wanted to get your thoughts on the shift, why you see this happening, and where this might lead us.
Yeah. So where I sit with Find Your Influence, and then where I sit also as a PR veteran myself, is the fact that while we called it influencer marketing for a long time, it was a lot of times it sat under that PR umbrella, right? And PR didn't have significant budget to invest in influencers. So it was really that exchange of product for content. And you can call it influencer relations, whatever you want, but very quickly, the marketing teams that are focused on conversion and performance, they're like, oh wow, influencer seems to be working over there under that PR umbrella. How do we shift that over here under the marketing umbrella and really drive conversions for this? And I would say definitely in the last 5 to 6 years, that shift has moved over where marketing budgets are being developed solely for influencer campaigns because they see that the results are there. And early on, it was the affiliate marketers were like, let's pay an influencer X amount and also give them 15% commission on any products, on any conversions that we see. And that shift has been natural over time. Again, when we're talking about the marketing funnel, the role that PR played in influencer relations, if you will, was that brand awareness. And then the CMOs were like, wait, we see this is working. How can we move these people from awareness down to consideration and into that purchase point? So I think that's been the switch. And I say that as a PR professional myself. I love that maybe PR kind of started it, if you will. And then it moved over to this conversion focus, and it continues to work for brands of all shapes and sizes.
That makes sense. And what types of brands are seeing success with sort of this conversion of influencer and affiliate marketing? And what are some of the reasons behind that success that you're seeing?
So at Find Your Influence, we're seeing this be successful with fashion brands, beauty brands, CPG brands. Any vertical can be successful with the combination of influencer and affiliate marketing, linking them together. I would caution you on the price point. So if we're talking about a $1,000 vacuum or some home appliance that's not something that you're using discretionary, you pull out your pocketbook and you're like, okay, I'm just going to go buy this casually. If it's a larger price point, I think you're going to see, like you would normally, the conversions aren't as high as you would hope. That's why fashion, beauty, CPG, we're seeing very strong performance and conversions there. At Find Your Influence, I believe it was a fashion brand and a beauty retailer that we recently worked with on an affiliate campaign using influencers. And the campaigns performed very well, but we used some of the budget to put paid media behind it. And by doing that, the influencers for the beauty retailer, if I'm recalling correctly, the 4 or 5 influencers drove about $1,800 in revenue, let's say, and then we put paid media behind it. So we understood that the audience, I'm making this up, was female 18 to 34. We took the content that already existed, went into Facebook, Instagram, built audiences 18 to 34 female to broadcast this content that the influencers already created, and drove nearly 300,000 in additional revenue there. So the opportunities there, when you're whitelisting, you're putting paid media behind the content, you're going to see exponential results. It's really going to increase the audience size and the reach that you have with the content that the influencers are creating on your behalf.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like paid media can really amplify your influencer marketing efforts. I'm curious, you mentioned sort of the traditional influencer categories, fashion, beauty, and CPG. What about categories like, I think you mentioned them earlier, financial services, technology? Would love to hear a little bit more about influencer marketing and some of these additional verticals.
Yeah, so we've worked with definitely financial services brands. I believe we have a campaign in progress now. We're not at the point where I can share results of how it's performed because I believe the influencers are either in the content creation phase or the content is recently gone to market, so we don't have the results to look at of that one yet. And I say that just as an affiliate partnership. We've done plenty of financial services brands partnerships. We've also done really well with travel brands, airlines, hotels, rental cars, anything tied to travel. And I also want to say that, there's an influencer for everyone. We have worked with a brand that wanted to target soybean farmers. And you're like, wait, there's an influencer for that? There are influencers that can reach soybean farmers to talk about the products that they need for their harvest. So I would say that there's a lot of brands that can be successful with influencer marketing when it comes to the convergence of influencer and affiliate. Keep that price point in mind and set performance expectations accordingly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know we're just continuing on this theme of the convergence of branding and influencer marketing. One of the questions that I've seen before is, what are some of the ways to break down internal silos among teams? So you kind of have your PR and social team, and you have your performance marketing team. And what have you seen work well for these two teams to kind of combine and leverage their efforts successfully?
Yeah, well, I would suspect any brand has an overall, strategy for the brand for the year from a performance perspective, and PR has a leg in that, and marketing has a leg in that, and every different team is invested in that, from the CTO, every team within the organization. So to break down these silos, influencer marketing needs to support the entire marketing and communications plan. So don't just say marketing's got that, PR and social are going to sit over here. But also, if you're in silos, you could have the PR team is working with one influencer, and then the marketing team says, oh, we'd love to work with that influencer. And they're both communicating from different accounts to that influencer. And the influencer's like, does the right hand not know what the left hand is doing? So when it comes to influencer, make sure everyone's on the same page and understands who is doing what. Because the last thing that you want to do when you're reaching out to an influencer is looking, as an organization, you don't know what's going on or who's doing what, because they're like, I don't know if I want to work with them because Lori's asking me to do this and Chelsea's asking me to do this, and they're in conflict with one another. So making sure that you're having regular meetings, cross-functional meetings, to share results over the course of your campaign, not just at its conclusion, but like, hey, the PR and social team found out that Lori's content is really performing on TikTok. It's doing really well. And the marketing team is saying, we'd love to work with Lori on Instagram. What do we need to know before we reach out to her? And then again, you're personalizing that. When you reach out to Lori to work with her on Instagram, you're like, hey, we love to see what you've done, how your content has performed on these channels. We'd love to work with you over on this side of the house to do X, Y, and Z. And you're ensuring that you're all on the same page, and the influencer's like, okay, they know what they're doing. Because that first moment there's confusion, that's a red flag that goes off, and the influencer's like, do I want to work with this brand if one person doesn't know what the other person is doing? So ensuring that you are credible, and you can do that by having these regular meetings. These regular meetings creates, kind of that buy-in with other teams to influence the influencer strategy, if you will. And without that comprehensive strategy, and without influencer being a leg in that strategy, just being one-off, or, in the past, we've seen brands at the end of the year, it's with use it or lose it budget before the end of the year, right? They're like, oh, let's throw it at influencer and see how it works. Well, what's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish? By having it part of your fully flushed out plan, it's going to be a more effective use of your spend.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And are you seeing like KPIs kind of aligning along those lines as well? So I know typically the PR and social team has been more engagement focused, and the performance team's been more bottom of the funnel type of metrics. Are you seeing a lot of sort of convergence and kind of looking at both of those things because they do have an overall marketing strategy when it comes to influencers?
Yeah, it's great when the marketing team can turn to the PR team and say, who has the highest engagement? Like of the creator of the influencers you've worked with on past campaigns, who has the highest engagement? What are you seeing in the comments? Use those people. Now your PR has results, and you can say, oh wow, these people are getting 600 comments when they post about this. Let's pivot them to a performance based campaign and see how it works. And then you have someone who posts and gets 4 comments. All right, they might not be somebody that we want to use over here on the performance side, but having those conversations on both sides of the house on a regular basis allows you to learn from one another. And again, any dime you spend on influencer marketing, you want, like, anytime you spend on marketing, you want to see back, with great yields to your ROI. So having those conversations and understanding what the PR team is doing and how they're doing it, and leverage that for your performance focus, I think is huge.
That makes a lot of sense. And there's influencer marketing is an amazing opportunity for brands. But what are some of the challenges that they face when it comes to managing these influencer and affiliate partnerships?
So first thing I would say, I don't know if it's a challenge or if it's a benefit. So I'm just gonna say it and explain both. So there's so many influencers today across so many platforms. Who are you going to work with, and how are they going to convert for you? So that's a good and a bad. So the good is there's so many influencers, right? And if you approach one influencer, like let's say you build out your list of 10 influencers you'd like to work with. The first 3 are working with your competitors and they have exclusivity. They can't work with you. They're off the table. The next 2, they want a rate that's beyond your budget. They're off the table. And now you have, I don't want to call them the bottom 5, but for this conversation, let's call them the final 5. Don't be discouraged when those top 5 influencers that were on your list can't work with you. But also know that beyond those 10, there's 10 more. And after that, there's 10 more. And there's an influencer for everyone. When I talked about soybean farmers that can help you promote your product, there is an influencer for everyone. But also there's so many influencers. How do you find them all? And this goes back to, if you're out there and you're just casting that fishing line and trying to reel somebody in on TikTok, or will this person work, or Twitter or Threads or whatever platform you're on, that's where the value of an influencer marketing solution like Find Your Influence comes in for you. So that's a challenge of like doing it on your own. The saturated market of creators really gives the brands so many options to choose from. So when we talked initially about test, keep testing, analyze your results, and then look again. You may be a fitness brand and you're selling a new sneaker. And you're like, okay, we want to work with runners, people who are doing triathlons or marathons or half marathons or whatever it may be. That's the type of influencer you want to work with. Well, you might be limiting yourself because you're only speaking to people who maybe are established runners and they already have their preferred shoe brand. What about people who maybe are setting, let's say, New Year's resolutions that I'm going to train for a 5K this year? Why don't you start working with those individuals who are maybe at the beginning of their commitment to fitness or running, and get them to purchase your product and try your product instead? So I think the idea of this is the type of influencer we want to work with. We have to work with this type of influencer. Don't get stuck in that mindset. Say, who are these other influencers that we could potentially reach out to that are an untapped market that we haven't considered before, who would be non-traditional for our brand? And let's explore that. Maybe it's a mom of 5 who's on the run and she's literally, moving this kid to this practice and this kid to this play and all of this. So, really think through, because I'm not asking you to change who your target audience is of buyers, but those target audience of buyers may be following other people who aren't traditional runners in that same sense. But now you're saying, if your target audience is females 24 to 34, they're moms, they can be runners, they can be professional business women, running from one meeting to another. Get creative with the type of influencers that you're willing to work with. And I think I think you'll be surprised when you step out of maybe what your, I don't want to say your comfort zone, but what your original plan may have been, and you get a bit more creative, how those results can really perform for you.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like keeping an open mind and being really creative and thinking through the types of influencers can really lead to success, especially getting influencers that are kind of just starting out. So there sounds like there's a lot of effective strategies that you can leverage and creative thinking that you can use to kind of reach those influencers that are going to move the needle for your brand.
And one other thing that I would say there too is when you're reaching out to influencers, just ask, do you have a moment to get on the phone? We'd love to chat with you. Bring them into the conversation. If you can say to these influencers, our goal is, we're working with 10 influencers and we want to sell 100 units. So we'd like for you to be responsible for selling 10 units. What's a creative way that we could do that with you? Now you're bringing the influencer in and you're allowing him or her to become part of the creative strategy and development versus here's the sneaker we want you to wear. We want you to be outside and running. We want you to see you lacing them up. When you're so prescriptive in there, the content isn't going to perform as well as you'd hope, because if you want to be prescriptive, create your own ad, put it, run your own ad on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. When you're working with influencers, you want to empower them to be creative. You want to bring them into the conversation. They know their audience better than you ever will, right? They know Sarah from Savannah. They know Tammy from Tallahassee. Like they know these people because they're interacting with them in the comments, in their DMs. They know why they're being followed. They may be posting polls, in Instagram stories, and they know how their followers are always responding to things. So when you bring them in and allow them into that creative process, they'll be like, you know what, my audience really responds when I do X. And they love trending music. Can I use this type of trending music in it? Now you're bringing them in and they're like, okay, I'm a part of this, and it's less transactional. They have, I don't want to say skin in the game. They always have skin in the game, but they feel like they're a part of your team. And by bringing them in and having them part of your conversation, again, you don't have to do everything, all the ideas that, they're coming up with, but bringing them in and them feeling heard has so many advantages for your program.
Yeah, I think it helps to have a collaborative relationship with your influencers, especially as you're maybe new to the market and kind of forming some of these relationships. I mean, it just seems like there's a tremendous amount of growth in influencer marketing. But what do you think has been holding back the growth of influencer and affiliate marketing? And what changes do you really see happening ahead?
I think something holding back, and I'll say small brands today. Like I think your Fortune 500 brands, a lot of your larger brands have tested, tried, and really been successful with influencer marketing. I think smaller brands or brands that haven't tried it yet, they'll try it and they'll leave after one test. And that one test, they just ask their social media person, hey, here's $5,000, go out and find some influencers to help us do X. Okay. And X is, we want them to sell 1,000 units. Well, first of all, is that realistic? Like, is this is that a real, based on the price point, the audiences, is that realistic ask? And then they do that test. Again, they're doing it in-house, and that person's out there casting that fishing line, trying to reel in influencers to work with. They're not using a platform like Find Your Influence. They have a bad experience, right? They invested $5,000 and they definitely didn't have a significant enough return on their investment. So they're like, you know what, we're out. It didn't work for us. But that's not fair, because if you're not approaching it with the correct strategy, with the correct goals in mind, understanding the targets that you're trying to reach, you're not going to be successful. You're setting yourself up from the beginning to fail, essentially. And identifying, like I said, identifying those influencers to work with. Without a platform like Find Your Influence, the struggle of finding those influencers is going to take so much time. You have to find them, and then you have to reach out to them and get them to respond to you. And then you have to negotiate a rate with them. Then you have to get them to review a contract. If they have red lines on the contract, it has to come back and you have to review those red lines. And no influencer is going to begin any work until there's a fully executed agreement. So that process of researching influencers, casting, contracting can take a few months. So when you're thinking about influencer marketing, this isn't something that you're just going to be like, oh, we've got 2 weeks, we'll pull this off. That's not realistic. You're not going to see results in that period of time. So brands leave after one test. They find it hard to identify the influencers. They don't have the tools that they need to succeed, right? So this is holding back the growth. If you don't have the right tools, you can't measure performance, you can't begin the casting, you can't run your campaigns, you're not setting yourself up for success. Another thing, you asked about, I think you asked about changes ahead for influencer
Yes.
marketing.
What changes do you see coming ahead that, might mitigate some of the challenges that the brands are facing?
Yeah. So before I look ahead, I want to look back for a moment and say that the platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, they're always changing, right? They're always evolving and new enhancements. On Pinterest, you can do idea pins. On Instagram, remember a few years ago when on Instagram stories, when you wanted to purchase something, you just swiped up. They let go of, they released that, and now it's a link, a button that you have to click on. It's just a matter of doing something different with your finger. But there was so much confusion for brands and influencers of like, is this going to affect the number of conversions that we're seeing? People aren't swiping up. They have to click on a link now. It's literally a different movement of your finger, but there was a lot of concern about that. That was a change. So these platforms are going to change. They're going to evolve. Prior to the pandemic, no one was talking about TikTok. TikTok has taken influencer marketing by storm, right? It has evolved. It's now, I believe it recently replaced Google as the top search engine. So individuals are going to TikTok and they're searching for things and finding it there instead of going to Google. In the last couple of weeks, Instagram rolled out Threads, their version of Twitter, if you will. I think recently it had 30 million downloads in the first few days. It's the most downloaded app in the history of ever so far. But what is it? How can we use this for influencer marketing? Everyone's trying to figure this out right now. The influencers, the brands. Is it a place where we're like leaving wisecrack, like jokes? Are we posting photos? Are we posting videos? Everyone's trying to figure it out. I would say claim your handle on every new platform that pops up. But don't jump in just to jump in. Kind of sit back and watch and see, like, unless you're a very risk tolerant company, maybe the Red Bulls and the Mountain Dews or the Wendy's are, jumping in there and being funny, like taking their tone of voice and messaging from other platforms immediately on there and hoping that it works. But I would say from a brand perspective, I think we're 2 weeks into Threads. Let's take a wait and see approach. Like, what's going to work here? What's not going to work here? Because you don't want to put money into a program that in 2 weeks is going to, I guess we'll use the word unravel because it's Threads. But you want to make sure that it's going to perform and understand how it's going to perform. And what does perform even mean? How do you measure performance in there? So there's so many changes ahead for platforms, and to say that, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, Clubhouse, whatever these things are, to say that this is all there ever is going to be is silly. I'm sure there's hundreds more in development, apps in development right now. But understand that as they come out, number one, claim your handle so that you have that. And then watch and see how it performs. Watch, listen, engage where it feels comfortable, where it feels safe engaging. But don't just jump in for the sake of jumping in, because you could say something offensive, do something offensive, turn people against you. And so in this world that we live in, where there's a lot of cancel culture, you don't want to be canceled because you inappropriately used a new, social platform that's out there. So I definitely say take a wait and see approach as these new platforms come out. Not to say they're going to be bad, but to ensure that you're safe when using them.
Yeah, it's like a lot of digital channels, right? Influencer marketing is ever changing, and being thoughtful about the platforms and how you're engaging with them can go a long way. And just speaking of platforms, I just want to return to the influencer networks. What would you say is the role of influencer networks? And are they adapting to meet the needs of both their influencer clients and their brand partners at the same time?
So I would say here that the role of the influencer network, pardon me, is to provide that support for brand marketers. So you don't have to do it all on your own. So platforms can help you identify influencers. They can help you um, monitor performance of your campaigns when they're live. They can help you. They should offer real-time analytics that show you how your campaigns are performing. But it's this third-party tool that can help you be successful. I'm going to speak from Find Your Influence because that's where I live and breathe. But we've adapted to meet the needs of clients because we have this opted in community of influencers. So over 10 years, we've curated a platform, pardon me, where more than 150,000 influencers have opted in to be discovered. So they've come to our website, created a profile for free to say, we want brands to discover us. So maybe that's beauty, fashion, technology, fintech, whatever they are, they're telling us who they are. And then when brands come to us, we're a modified search engine, if you will. Here's the 150,000 influencers that have opted into our platform. We also now have a discovery tool that allows us to reach 24 million influencers. So that's probably everybody, right? Every influencer out there. And that means if they're not in our platform, it's as simple as sending them a message through our platform to say, hey, we'd love to work with you. Can you complete this profile, join our platform? This brand wants to work with you on this campaign. One of the big differentiators for Find Your Influence is we like to, knowing that we've been in business for 10 years and we've run hundreds of thousands of campaigns on our platform for tens of thousands of brands, we have performance results. We know how campaigns have performed. So when you do a managed services campaign through us, where our team will help manage the whole program for you, we guarantee our results. So if you say, we're going to spend $75,000 on this campaign, the brand is going to spend $75,000 on this campaign. Our team will go and here are your campaign goals. Our team will come back and say, here's the strategy that we recommend. X number of influencers on these platforms, this amount of paid media behind it. These are the results that we can guarantee. That's what our team does for you. So that influencer network, the managed services program, allows you to have that extra team behind you. So, your internal team can go about doing all the hundreds of other things that are on their plate and just be checking in with our team as our team is sharing updates on campaign performance. What influencer networks like Find Your Influence does to help our influencers is we're providing ongoing education. So that's Instagram lives, social media content. We do a monthly newsletter to our influencers. We have a webinar series that we do as well called the FYI by Find Your Influence, where we're trying to bring all stakeholders in influencer marketing together on a monthly basis to talk about what's trending, what's happening within the space. You mentioned earlier, marketing teams operating in silos. We don't want brands, marketing agencies, influencers, talent managers, platforms. We don't want everybody operating in silos. Let's bring each other together to have collective conversations that ignite and empower these important conversations that make the industry better and move us all forward. So long-winded answer to your question, but that's what the role of our influencer network is.
Yeah, it really sounds like an influencer network plays a really important role in sort of managing and operating an influencer program. And as a managed service provider, you're also, operating as like an extension of the brand's team, giving them some extra legs to really deliver on the influencer marketing value proposition. One of the things I know that influencer networks are really powerful for is just measuring the goals and KPIs of a program. And, as you look at, influencer and affiliate marketing, what are the goals and KPIs that brands should consider when they're running these types of campaigns?
That I want to give you a straight answer, but it really changes per brand and what their goals are. Like are they launching a product? Are they updating a product? What is the messaging behind there? We can customize a campaign to meet any client goals. I would say when pairing influencer marketing with affiliate marketing, though, some of the things that you see regularly or you would expect is, that return on ad spend. cost per lead, that help drive the revenue for the brand. I mentioned earlier some of the fashion, beauty, CPG brands we've worked with. From a return on ad spend perspective, we see probably as low as 3x return, and we've seen upwards of 18 to 20x return on ad spend. So there is value in pairing your influencer marketing with your affiliate marketing program. So definitely don't dismiss any of that. But I would definitely say that the CPL and the ROAS are important, but I don't want to tell brands what they have to measure, but we see that frequently.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it sounds like it's based on the brand's goals, and it can vary based on the brand, what they're kind of looking for in their metrics. But there are some commonalities in terms of engagement and lower funnel metrics that brands are looking for.
Yeah.
And then just to wrap it up, I know we're going to take questions after this, but I just wanted to have you share, what's the one takeaway you'd like CMOs and marketers to keep top of mind when it comes to affiliate and influencer marketing? And what are some of the things that they can start implementing now to be successful as they kind of look to take on influencer marketing?
Yeah. So whether you're a CMO, a brand marketer, wherever you sit and you have budget dollars to put towards a tool, I would say being the best steward of your dollars. Don't say, "Oh, I'm going to figure this out all on my own, and I'm going to make it work. I've never done it before, but I'm going to make it work." Engage a platform like Find Your Influence. You can do it on a budget of most any size. We have an exchange program where you can gift product in exchange for content. So turn to the experts, do your research, but don't just say, "All right, I'm going to figure this out on my own." Influencer marketing is a behemoth. Finding all of the influencers to work with, all of this, don't go into it blindly. I would say do your research, talk to your competitors, talk to your peers. Who are they using? What have they done? But I did mention Find Your Influence is 10 years old this month. We have all this experience and expertise. Turn to us. Let us know how we can help advise you, coach you, mentor you, sponsor you through your initial campaign or whatever point you are within your influencer marketing journey. We want to be there to help you. And that's what I would tell CMOs is make sure you're investing and you have the tools to set yourself up for success.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable information for CMOs, especially as they look to invest or embark on influencer marketing. We do have a few questions from the audience, so I was just going to run through some of those. The first is about influencer marketing and user-generated content. Yes, when should a brand sort of leverage our influencer marketing or maybe invest more in user-generated content?
Great question. So when we think of influencer marketing, we think of you're engaging an influencer to create content about your product or service and post it on their channels because you want to reach their audience. Well, maybe you're like, I really love the content they create. I don't necessarily know that it's going to convert well on their page, but I want to contract with that influencer to create UGC, this user-generated content. And I want to pay them for it to live on the brand's pages or the brand to own that content. So there are influencers / creators out there that do both. There are people that maybe just create content for their own page. There are people who create content on behalf of brands and charge rates to give that content to brands. So understand, where do you think it's going to have the biggest impact? Is it going to have the biggest impact for you to own the content and you to put paid media behind it for months or years or however long? Then you're going to want to work with creators to create that UGC content for your brand. Rates are different based on if they're creating it for you to own in perpetuity, or if they're creating it for their own channels and for your brand to use organically. So you can approach it two different ways. It's not really influencer marketing. It's more of that traditional social marketing when you're asking them, like, think if you were going out and you were hiring models and a production crew and, actors to create content to put in to film in your television commercial. Now you're asking someone with a social media presence, an influencer, to create that for you to own and run on your digital channels.
That's great. And then another question is, it's kind of that time of year. A lot of brands are starting to plan for the holidays. What do you see as some effective strategies for brands that are preparing for this year's holiday season?
Well, my hope is that everyone's planning right now, but I think in reality, a lot of brands are like, we have plenty of time. But for those brands that are planning ahead, I would say, even if your campaign brief isn't fully flushed out yet for the holiday, if it's kind of a work in progress, begin your casting now. Begin looking for those influencers you want to work with. Start the negotiations now. If you start it now, they are more likely to give you and lock into the rates, their current rates. And I will tell you, influencers know that brands go all in Q4 and their rates will go up. So if you contract with them July, August, September for November or December activations, you're more likely to get their rate card rates versus their last minute holiday rush rate. So I would say begin that casting and that contracting process with creators soon and say, hey, here's the direction that we're going with the campaign brief. It isn't finalized. We know it's not going to change abruptly, but an influencer isn't going to sign an agreement without knowing what, the campaign focus is going to be, because it might not be in alignment with who they are or something that their audience will respond to. But if you can give them a general outline of the campaign brief, like, this is what we're working to finalize. Are you on board? Beginning that casting now can save you money. It locks in a date for you. You can get a premium date, if you will. If you begin reaching out to influencers in, November, maybe it's the week before Black Friday and Cyber Monday, they've already contracted with another brand for those dates. And influencers don't post. It's not good practice for influencers to post for more than one brand on the same day, because you're going to get some delusion there in your conversions. And so if you want someone to post on Black Friday for you, start now. Lock that date in now. Be the first one to claim that square on the Monopoly board, if you will. But it's really important to start today.
Yes, it sounds like starting early is the way to go with influencers, especially when it comes to the holidays and how crazy that can be.
Yeah.
We have another question from the attendees on, do you have any best practices for influencers activating on an affiliate campaign?
Best practices. Yes, I would say the more that you can, let me back up for a second. I also worked as a talent manager for Find Your Influence, managing some influencers, all of their brand opportunities that came through. And what I would often tell them is, this is what you're contracted to do, but what are you going to do to surprise and delight? What are you going to over deliver? Where can we over deliver here? And I would tell you, if you're working on an affiliate campaign, think through, where can you over deliver? If you're contracted to do one Instagram in-feed post, 2 Instagram stories, and a TikTok, what can you do above and beyond that? Could you do more Instagram stories? Because the more often you share that link or your code, whatever your affiliate link is, the more earning potential you have as an influencer. So I would approach it as, from an influencer perspective of where can you surprise and delight? From a brand side of things, I would stress, I would reinforce when you're having conversations early with the influencers of what the potential upside for them is. So maybe you have an amazing 25% affiliate commission for them, and the product is I'm going to mess up my math here. Maybe it's a $10 product. So every product that they help sell, it's a $2.50 commission for them. And they're like, oh, my audience loves this already. Let them know the upside of, if they share it more often, if they create more content, what the upside to them could be. But sharing that, don't just say, here's the 25% commission. Spell out, if you help convert X number of sales, that could lead to X dollars in revenue to you.
That makes a lot of sense. Another question that we have is about macro and micro influencers, and how to work with them, and when best to engage with each of those types of influencers.
So everyone wants to be, I want to work with the biggest influencers, or this person has, this person's audience size is 500,000. It's a no brainer. I want to work with them. It might be a no brainer, but what's your budget? Because to work with an influencer who has 500,000 followers, you're going to pay a lot of money. You could work with 10 influencers who each have 100,000 followers and pay less there, right? And maybe have a bigger impact there. So I don't know that you necessarily want to say it has to be this audience size. It has to be the right audience. The engagement has to be right. If you're going to work with fewer influencers at the macro level than at the micro level, and so understand: do you want to have more content out there with smaller audiences, or less content out there with larger audiences? But also continue to keep in mind the opportunity to put whitelisting, paid media, boosting any of the content behind some of the more micro influencers allows you that larger reach in the end as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And just one last question before we kind of wrap things up. We have a question about what are some ways to leverage influencers in specific geographic regions?
Oh, I love that. I often reference that if maybe you're working with a beauty brand who's coming out with like a new eyeshadow palette, and it's like the colors of the University of Miami, right? I can't imagine anyone wearing green and orange eyeshadow, but maybe that's the green, orange, and white is the color palette for this eyeshadow. You want to work with current students or alumni that went to the University of Miami, and you're really looking at targeting geographically. Platforms like Find Your Influence can help you do that. You're literally checking a box of where you want these influencers to be and their audience to be. Now, if you're not using a platform, you're going out there and you're probably looking through, hoping they put in their bio where they live, right? You're hoping they put that information in there. But working with a platform like Find Your Influence, just you click one box and we're serving up for you the type of creators that you're looking for that meet your needs.
Yeah, it sounds a really easy way to do it rather than having to comb through a lot of information
Yeah.
on different social sites. Well, this was great. I want to thank you, Tammy, for joining us today, and everyone for attending and be asking some really great questions. I'm just going to remind you all that we're going to share the video via email and through our social channels. And if you'd like to follow up with Find Your Influence, you can reach out to Tammy or take advantage of the 10% off your first managed campaign. Remember, you can contact Tammy at her email address, which is tammy@findyourinfluence.com.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.